All right, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I know it's an unusual night, but I think this week and maybe next week we'll end up doing a day early just because next week's a holiday and tomorrow's a little hectic for me. We got a lot of stories to get to. I'm going to get through as much as I can. We have Den here tonight who is helping with moderation. So leave your comments, questions in the area, and we will get to them in between stories. Remember, you can always support the channel by going to patreon.com/Hemant. And as always, you can subscribe to the newsletter at friendlyatheist.com. And before I start, let me share one thing with all of you, which is this weekend. If you are watching this live, this weekend, I will be in St. Louis giving a handful of talks for the Ethical Society of St. Louis. And Den has the link in the comments right now. But basically, I'm talking about atheism. I'm talking about why we need to support secular voices, and talking about when our heroes go off the rails. It's a series of talks, Saturday night, Sunday morning. They are all free. They are all open to the public. I hope if you live in the St. Louis area or like within driving distance, you can make it. And all those details are there. If you're there, I hope I get to see you. Please stop by and say hello. Okay, and with that, let's get to some stories here. And if I can pull this up for a second first. Okay. Let's start with the story about the Supreme Court because they did something really good this week, which is not something I get to say very often. And spoiler alert, I'm going to go ahead and get to the point of this story right away. They chose not to take up a case that was very scary for a lot of people who follow church-state separation. So I want to explain to you what this story was about and why their decision not to take it is also a big deal. And here's what this story is all about. You have to go back over like 10 years at this point for the origin of this story. But basically, back in December of 2015 in Florida, two high schools were meeting for the championship football game for the Class 2A football playoffs. So again, smaller schools, high school, Florida, they're in the championship game. And as it turned out, the two schools that made it to the championship game were two private Christian schools who have access to that league. One of them, the only one that matters, is named Cambridge Christian School. But the other one was a Christian school as well. So before the game, one of the Cambridge Christian administrators was like, "Can I say prayers over the loudspeaker before the game begins?" And the Florida High School Athletic Association, which oversees all of this competition, was like, "You definitely cannot do that because it's a state-run event. It's televised. If you make it to the championship game in high school football, you're going to be on TV somewhere. It's at a public facility. I mean, it would be illegal for Christians to basically hijack the loudspeaker system for religious purposes for what is a very public event." Now, nobody was stopping the Christians from praying on their own. The kids could do it. The adults could do it. Hell, it's a private school. If the kids and adults want to pray together before the game, no one was stopping them. It's not even a public school. No one cares. Do it in the locker room. But the reason they didn't care about that is because, as we know by now, conservative Christians who say they want to pray before or after a big game, it's never about the prayer. It's about the performance of it all. It doesn't count if the whole audience doesn't watch you doing it. You know what I mean? That was true with Joe Kennedy in Washington State, who wanted to pray at midfield after games. And it was true of these Christians at this high school football game in 2015. It didn't count, and God can't hear them unless they pray over the loudspeakers before the game. So, by the way, for what it's worth, they were told, no, you can't use the loudspeaker system. They went ahead and prayed at midfield together, which no one cared about because they were not on TV yet. The game had not started yet. The players did it. The coaches did it. The administrators did it. And according to one news source, at least one referee joined in the prayer circle too. I don't love the look of that, but whatever. No one cared. So after the game was over, the Christians at Cambridge Christian eventually filed a lawsuit against the state, basically saying we should have had access to the loudspeaker and you didn't give it to us and you're violating our First Amendment rights. So it's a dumb lawsuit because, again, no one was stopping them from praying. So guess what happens? This goes to court. And in 2017, a judge says, "What the hell are you talking about? You have no argument here. You don't get to take over the loudspeaker at a public high school football game." That's literally something the Supreme Court decided in the year 2000 in a case called Santa Fe. You don't get to do that. What are you talking about? So what do the Christians do? They appeal that ruling. And an appellate court basically said, look, the earlier judge dismissed the whole thing. We think you have merit to some part of what you are arguing here, and we do want the judge to weigh in on that. But honestly, that judge kind of had a good point. So they sent it back and they said, hey, judge, can you rule on some of these smaller issues? So in March of 2022, the district court judge weighs in again. Guess what he says this time? You're still wrong. You don't get to take over the loudspeakers. It's still illegal. So what do the Christians do? They appeal again. And this is where it gets just stupid funny at this point. Because now the judges at the appellate court, they basically said, yeah, just do whatever the first judge said. We're not overturning this. But they gave reasons. The judges said prayers over the loudspeaker count as government speech, and that you can't have the Florida High School Athletic Association doing that for you. And when they said you're not allowed to pray over the loudspeakers, they were not violating your First Amendment rights. You don't have a First Amendment right to take over the loudspeakers like that. And the thing is, all of this made sense because it's quite literally what the Supreme Court said in the year 2000. In 2000, what they said is that prayers delivered on school property at school-sponsored events over the school's public address system violates the Establishment Clause. And I know the year 2000 is like 7 lifetimes ago, but that's still what the precedent is. But there were also, this is where it gets stupid funny, that appeals court was like, you don't really have a case. But while we're here, let's just go ahead and look through what you all said. And the judges said there are 2 problems with your argument. The first is standing. Are you allowed to bring this case to us? Because the judges said, even if we say you win, even if we say the Christian school wins, what exactly do you win? Like, we don't want to rule on this case if you're not going to get anything in return. And the thing you wanted is the loudspeaker at the state championship. But the only way our ruling in your favor makes any sense is if there is reason to believe you're going to be in the championship game very soon. And guess what the judges said about that? Check this out. It's so funny to me that they did this. This is what the judges said in the ruling. Cambridge Christian acknowledges that its standing theory relies on speculation that it will make it to another championship game, which makes sense. But the school contends that that speculation does not defeat standing because there's no need to prove that future harm is certain. Basically, they disagree that they need to make it to a championship game for them to have legal standing. But check out this. But the school does need to demonstrate that future injury is certainly impending, or at the very least, there is a substantial risk that the harm will occur. Like, if we know your school's going to make it to the championship game, you're going to need us to step in if you want to take over the loudspeakers. And you need to show us that that's a very real possibility. But here's this part. Given the Lancers' past performance on the gridiron, the judges are just making fun of the team at this point. Given your performance on the football field, it cannot meet that standard. All the more so because, as Cambridge Christian admits, the competitiveness of its football team has waned over the last few seasons, and the team is now in what it calls a rebuilding phase that it expects to last for a few years. Hope springs eternal, but standing cannot be built on hope. With all due respect to this Christian school's football team, the Fighting Lancers, there is nothing to suggest that the team's participation in a future football state championship is imminent or even likely. Oh my God, these elderly judges are like, okay, but your football team totally sucks. There's no way you're making it to the state championship. So, on that basis, what do you need us weighing in on this for? Because even if you win, it doesn't matter because you guys suck. I don't think I've ever seen judges just tear apart a football team like that. It's glorious. So that was the first issue. The other issue is mootness, which is that the judges said, why do you need us to weigh in on this? It doesn't matter. And the reason they said it doesn't matter is because in 2023, guess what Ron DeSantis did in Florida? Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, and the Christian legislature, they decided to pass a law in the state of Florida specifically about this issue. And I'll just show you this. This is like the talking points that Republicans spread about this bill. And check this out at the very bottom. What does the bill do, HB 225? Well, look at this down here. I'll remove myself so you can read it. Look at that second item. Preserves the First Amendment right to speech, including public prayer at the beginning of high school sporting events. Basically, Florida passed a law to make sure this situation never happens again. That law said that any high school athletic association that has public schools in it, like, for example, the Florida High School Athletic Association, which regulates everything, interscholastic activities across the state, they have to allow schools in any playoff games to make brief opening remarks if requested by the school using the PA system at that event. And they only get 2 minutes to do it. But literally, as you saw in that, in this right here, they said it includes public prayer. I mean, that's really the only thing they cared about. So Republicans in Florida passed a law saying, we're saying literally anyone can take over the loudspeakers for 2 minutes if your team makes it to the playoffs. Say whatever you want. There were some caveats, like it has to be school appropriate or whatever. It can't be derogatory, rude, or threatening. But besides that, it looks like that takes care of the issue, doesn't it? I mean, and the other thing about it is the way they wrote the bill. It doesn't say it's about prayer. It doesn't say it's about Christianity. But in practice, that's totally how that would play out. Because let's say your public school made it to a championship game and you wanted to take over the loudspeaker. If the coaches really wanted a Christian to speak and say a prayer, there are ways to do it in a neutral way. You could have the team members vote on who should speak in the loudspeaker, and they're going to pick the Christian. You could have the school vote on it. You could have the coaches pick a representative to deliver your opening remarks. Like, there are ways to pretend to be neutral, but absolutely preference Christianity. But in any case, that's a horrible law. But in any case, the judges said that bill passed. So why are we here? Which is a fair point to make, right? So that bill was a Trojan horse to allow public demonstrations of prayer at athletic competitions, even though athletes and coaches and administrators can already pray on their own. Don't know why that's not enough for them. Anyway, the judges said if that law's in place, you don't need us to step in. But they also weighed in on the merits of the case anyway. They said, you don't have standing. There's no reason you need us to weigh in on this. But while we're here, let's go ahead and do it. They said the history of the loudspeaker policy in the Florida High School Athletic Association confirms that it's government speech. How? Because what they say before games is almost always scripted and delivered by a third-party announcer selected by an outside group, not the teams. So there's only one example the judges could find of someone praying over the loudspeakers before a game, and it was a one-off in 2012, and the judges said one instance does not a history make. So there's no tradition of prayer. Everyone knows it's government speech. The public would reasonably believe something said over the loudspeaker is government speech and that the state is endorsing the message. So on the merits, they said no. And they also said the government does have control over what's said over the loudspeakers. So saying that people can't use it for religious purposes, that's not a rejection of your freedom of speech. That's the government saying we have limitations on what we're allowed to do here. Okay, so that's what this story is all about. And yet, after this devastating ruling where the judges not only said you have no argument, but they made fun of how bad the football team was, the Christians appealed it anyway. They said, who cares what the appellate court says? Let's try to get this in front of the Supreme Court because maybe they'll reverse that decision from 2000. So they asked the Supreme Court about this. And they have legal reasons for doing that. But basically what legal scholars said is if the Supreme Court agrees to hear this case, it may very well expand the parameters of religious expression in public. You are basically giving a green light to government officials to do religious things in public on behalf of the state. And that is scary. There was another thing I wanted to show you too that was also disturbing. And it's from our buddy, Andrew Seidel, who was writing for Rolling Stone about this case. He is a constitutional attorney, but he pointed out a couple of months ago, if the Supreme Court takes up this case, there's another issue that people are not talking about. Will Brett Kavanaugh sit in on this case? Because, as the headline says, Brett Kavanaugh has a clear conflict in this football case. And check out what Andrew said here. He's referring to the 2000 Santa Fe case where attorneys argued by invoking Nazis, arguing that if the court's justices were to rule in favor of the families who did not want the government forcing Christian prayers on everyone, then Christians would be relegated to bottom of the barrel status in our society, below socialists and Nazis and Klan members and panhandlers and ideological and political advocacy groups of all stripes. In other words, everyone else has free speech, not us. Without a right to impose prayer on everyone, Christians are inferior. This is what they were arguing in the year 2000 in the Santa Fe case. And guess why Andrew brings that up? You know who wrote that amicus brief urging the Supreme Court to rule in favor of the school that wanted the prayers? That would be Brett Kavanaugh. He was a lawyer for the right-wing group that urged the Supreme Court at the time to take up that case and rule in favor of the Christians. And now, 25 years later, Kavanaugh is on the court. And isn't that a conflict of interest? And I know Brett Kavanaugh doesn't care about conflicts that involve him, but there you go. As Andrew Seidel writes, the group and Cambridge Christian School want to relitigate a case that Kavanaugh lost. The future Supreme Court justice didn't just make an argument, he argued with vitriol and venom and painted anyone who disagreed with his take as a hostile, absolutist, and extremist out to cleanse public schools and relegate American Christians to a second-class status. Never mind that the Mormon and Catholic families bringing the case were American Christians and were doing so to protect their religious freedom. So all that's to say, would Brett Kavanaugh, if the Supreme Court took up this case, would Brett Kavanaugh say, you know what, I have something to do with this case because I literally argued this one in the past, so I'm going to sit this one out. Do you remember Oklahoma tried to have a public Catholic charter school a year or two ago? And that case made it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And what happened? Amy Coney Barrett said, I'm involved. I have a direct tie to this case, so I'm going to sit this one out. And she did. And the court ruled 4-4, like they couldn't break that tie. They decided, I guess, whatever the Oklahoma Supreme Court said is going to stand. And the Oklahoma Supreme Court said, this is absolutely illegal. You can't have a taxpayer-funded Catholic school. All because Amy Coney Barrett sat that one out. So, was Brett Kavanaugh going to vote to take up this case? And if they did, was he going to sit it out? We don't know. But that was a concern, right? So all of this stuff is very disturbing and troubling. And then this week, this is the big news, when the Supreme Court released its list of what cases to take up earlier this week, they say, okay, we have some decisions on this stuff. We're going to take up one case, 25-5, and look at what got denied. What cases are they not taking up? Look at that. With one line right there, they said we are not taking up the case of Cambridge Christian School. That means the earlier decisions stand, and all the earlier decisions said, what the hell are you doing filing a lawsuit over this? You lose. You don't get to hijack the loudspeakers. So, yay. It's a big deal because the alternative that they took up the case could have been so much worse. And now, in order to take up a case, 4 of the 9 justices have to vote to say we want to hear this one. I don't know if Brett Kavanaugh was part of that 4. We don't know. I don't know if he sat this one out. Maybe they didn't have enough votes, but I don't know if Kavanaugh was in or out on that. But that's interesting. All of this is a relief. I mean, church-state separation is still in danger, obviously, but at least this is not the vehicle the justices are using to further destroy that wall. I spoke with a number of atheist church-state separation groups, and they were all just relieved after the Supreme Court decided not to take up this case. They called it an important win for the constitutional rights of students and their families. They called it an example of Christian privilege run amok. American Atheists said this court made it absolutely clear 25 years ago that student athletes and fans at state-sanctioned sporting events should be free from proselytizing. The Establishment Clause would mean nothing if our government could sidestep it just by handing its microphone to a minister. So that is great news. Again, I don't know why any Christian would be upset by this decision. They can still pray. No one is stopping them. They could pray at school. They could pray before school. They could pray on the bus ride to the big game. Doesn't matter. No one's stopping them. But again, this case was always about whether they could hijack the loudspeaker and force their prayers on everyone else. And thankfully, that is not happening. Not in Florida, not anywhere else. But you can understand why people were worried. Like, for a court that has already warped the First Amendment to privilege Christians, this was so much something they could have done. I don't know why they said no, whether it's caution or calculation, or maybe just they thought this was a bad case. Remember last week they said we're not taking up the Kim Davis case to overturn Obergefell? Like, that's the right outcome. It doesn't mean Obergefell is safe, but they're like, Kim Davis's case is dumb. We're not using that to do it. So Christian nationalists did not get what they wanted. The loudspeakers are off limits to them. That is good news. But it's temporary. They're going to try to do it again somehow. I will stop there for now. What questions we got with this story? Oh, thanks for becoming a YouTube member, Dusty Dark Horse. Thanks for that donation. In the beginning, the universe was created. This had made many people very angry and has widely been regarded as a bad move. Great line from Hitchhiker's Guide. And a great thing to say in an invocation, I'm sure. Evangelicalism is performative. Very much so. If you've been to a church, you know that. I mean, you see these lawsuits. They're never actually persecuted. We talked about this with the Trump administration's anti-Christian bias task force. Like, oh, wow, bias against Christians? That is bad. Give us examples of it. And they have none. It's always Christians didn't get to do everything they wanted to force their religion on everyone else. So we're calling that persecution. It's the way this game always works for them. What is the Christians' end game in this scenario? Win souls is the one they get worth the hundreds they annoy? Good question. I mean, their end game is if you open the door a little bit to saying a prayer for, let's be honest, an audience that probably would have been there to watch those 2 Christian schools pray. But again, there might be people in the stands who don't want to hear that or who don't care. And so for them to hear it, yeah, I mean, that is why they do everything, right? It's to win over souls, and they don't care who they annoy. Otherwise, they would have changed their tactics forever ago. I can't watch this today, but I did want to make sure you guys knew about Rebecca Watson's new video about Lawrence Krauss and Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, my friend, that's on the list for today. We're getting to that story very soon. So yes. All right, let me get to another one. Give me a second here. Got that one. All right. There are bad press releases, and then there's the press release I am about to show you, which may be the most disturbing press release I have read in maybe forever. It involves Jeffrey Epstein, because of course it does, because everything in the news revolves around this guy now. Here's the backstory you need to know. You may have heard this week or last week, but remember Megyn Kelly? She's the former Fox News host who believes Santa Claus is white. Side tangent for just a second. For those of you who knew me 20 odd years ago, I did this experiment where I visited a bunch of Christian churches. As you can see somewhere behind me, I sold my soul on eBay is back there. Anyway, when I was visiting those churches, Fox News called me up and said, come on our channel and talk about your experiment. And I did. I'll just say it was a fine, normal interview. I thought it was actually pretty pleasant. The person who asked the questions was Megyn Kelly before she became Megyn Kelly. That one is still on YouTube somewhere, that interview I did. Anyway, Megyn Kelly is now insane. And she has a podcast and she says insane things there too. But basically, she was interviewing a guest and she was downplaying the seriousness of the Epstein emails and the files that people are now trying to have released if Donald Trump gets around to signing that bill anytime soon. And one of the things she said in her little rant against what's happening is that Megyn Kelly did not like that people were calling Jeffrey Epstein and his associates pedophiles. And here's directly what Megyn Kelly said. I would show you this clip, but I think they would take down this entire video if I showed it to you, so I'll read it to you. Megyn Kelly said he wasn't into like 8-year-olds, but Epstein, but he liked the very young teen types that could pass for even younger than they were, but would look legal to a passerby. And then later she added, there's a difference between a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old. You know? That's a direct quote from Megyn Kelly. Her argument basically is that it's unfair for anybody to call Epstein a pedophile because, you guys, he wasn't technically into little kids. He was into slightly older little kids. And therefore, pedophile's the wrong word. It's more like a phebophile. So, like, calm down, everybody. And the second you start parsing which underage age is the okay one, you've taken a terrible turn in your career. Like, it's a horrible argument because who the hell cares about that technicality? Pedophile is shorthand for everything those people allegedly did, right? Like, I am not parsing the exact demarcation or anything like that. No one's doing that. The point is, Epstein exploited children, and it looks like a lot of his associates did too, and that's why people want to get to the bottom of this. It's not so complicated. You got to break down underage victims into classes based on how old they actually were. So anyway, that's the backstory. Now here is where the Catholic League comes in. They heard the word pedophile and their spidey senses began to tingle. So this is a nonprofit group that basically sees it as their mission to defend the Catholic Church no matter what at all times. And they put out a press release, and it's just horrible. Their website sucks, by the way, but here's the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights. Headline, Megyn Kelly is right about Epstein. Which, Oh boy, you're just saying this out loud. Yikes. But it's written by Bill Donahue, who is basically the only guy who works for the Catholic League because no one else there matters. He gets paid between like $500,000 to $1 million a year for these press releases. But let's see what Bill said about what. Why is he chiming in on this? This is my first thought when I saw that headline. No one was asking. I wonder what the Catholic League thinks about Epstein. I wonder what they think about Megyn Kelly. No one was asking for this. They could have said nothing. But Bill Donahue is like, where can I shove myself in to make myself the center of attention? And he decided this was the place to do it. Okay, what did we say about Megyn Kelly? Her critics are plainly ignorant. And their gripe is not with her. It is with the American Academy of Pediatrics. Let's see the highlighted part. A pedophile is a person who has sex with a prepubescent male or female, meaning someone 10 or younger. And listen, I don't know if that's the medical definition of the word, but the point is, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. No one's saying, is Jeffrey Epstein technically a pedophile? Or are we just using that for shorthand for this guy was very horrible to children, which is really what they're getting at, right? Let's keep going though. Why are they chiming in on this? Why do you have to speak up? Why does this matter to the Catholic League? You guys, pause this video and read this with me when I'm posting the clip later. For too long, the media and the chattering class have said that the Catholic Church clergy abuse scandal was due to pedophile priests. Wrong! The data clearly show that the vast majority of priestly victims were male. Why are you saying that? 81%. Okay. And that 78% were post-pubescent. Why is this important? Because it means the molesters were homosexuals. When males have sex with males who are post-pubescent, that's called homosexuality, not pedophilia. My dude, when males have sex with males who are post-pubescent, that's called assault. It's called sexual abuse. Doesn't matter if you're straight or not. That is besides the point. If there are priests who went after young boys, I want them arrested and imprisoned as well. So look at what Bill Donahue did here. He's like, you guys, I know about pedophilia accusations because I've made my career off of defending the Catholic Church from allegations of pedophile priests. And what I can tell you is that they are not pedophile priests. They are priests who went after the slightly older range of underage children. Voila, give me $1 million. This is what I do. And instead of it would have been bad enough if he just said 78% of them were post-pubescent. So you guys, 4 out of 5 of these kids are not children. They're other kinds of children, but not children. But no, he chimed in with most of them were boys. So really, this is about gay people. That's his argument here. I want to remind you, this is in defense of Megyn Kelly, who I'm sure when she hides in her lair is like, Bill, I got this. I don't need you defending me. You are not helping. So back to Bill. The fact is, only 3.8% of clergy sexual abuse victims were boys 10 or younger. Only may be the most disturbing word in that sentence. Only 3.8% of victims were actually little kids, little kids, 10 or younger. He writes that as if to dismiss all the stuff that we now know about the Catholic Church. Let's say for a second that he's right. Let's say only 3.8% of the priests were pedophiles by Bill Donahue's own definition. That would still be a problem because we are talking about a lot of victims. 3.8% of a big number is still a big number. And yet he's like, you guys, the number is much smaller. Calm down. It's not, though. It's huge. And again, he's saying this to He's turning a whole story about Jeffrey Epstein into gay people are bad. It's just wild. By the way, in case you want actual numbers, 3.8% of victims. Do you know how many boys we would be talking about? 12,500. And that would just be in France. And I know that because France actually put out a report and said as much. So if you go globally, it's a hell of a lot more. And that's what Bill Donahue doesn't seem to care about because he's like, yeah, only tens of thousands of little boys were actual victims. Stop saying there were hundreds of thousands of victims. Like, this is the sort of defense of sexual abuse you get from a guy who made, according to their tax returns, $650,000 in salary last year. I checked because I got mad. How broken do you have to be as a human to willingly work for the Catholic League? As one Redditor put it, the Catholic League justifying the abuse of young teens is not the flex they think. And by the way, this is not the first time the Catholic League has done this, and I know because I've been following them for a while. Do you remember in 2018 in Pennsylvania, then Attorney General Josh Shapiro, who is now the governor, he basically got a grand jury to look at what was happening in the Catholic Church. And the grand jury released this massive report that detailed allegations of sexual abuse all throughout Pennsylvania in the Catholic Church. And that grand jury report was such a bombshell that it pressured other attorneys general in other states to do their own grand jury look into the Catholic Church. And everything we saw in the Spotlight investigation from a couple decades ago, it happened again a few years ago because of Josh Shapiro and what he started. But the point is, after that grand jury report came out in Pennsylvania, guess who chimed in to say this isn't that big of a deal? Yep, it was Bill Donahue. He released a very weird report. I'm just going to scroll up here. Pennsylvania grand jury report debunked by Bill Donahue, PhD. Got to have that PhD in there. So you could see how useless a PhD is. I'm going to jump down to page 7 because look at how he goes about doing this. Here we go. Myth. The abusive priests were pedophiles. What does he say? Fact. This is the greatest lie of them all, repeated nonstop by the media and late night talk TV hosts. And he scrolls down. Let me repeat what I have often said. Most gay priests are not molesters, but most of the molesters have been gay. Once again, ignoring the real issue and trying to make this out to be a gay thing. Not to admit this, and this includes many bishops who are still living in a state of denial about it, means the problem will continue. Unless we root out the gay priests, you're going to see this happening, he says. Indeed, there are reports today about seminaries in Boston and Honduras that are disturbing. How do I know that most of the problem is gay-driven? The data. And then he points to a study, which is the one he repeated here, that there was a study that found 81% of victims were male, 78% were post-pubescent. It's the same thing he's saying right now. How many were pedophiles? How many of the priests were pedophiles? Less than 5%. Less than 5%. And look what he says right up here. It's been a homosexual scandal all along. Jesus Christ. This guy has been saying this garbage for so many years now, and it hasn't aged well at all. At all. I'll point you to one more thing right here. Same report. Josh Shapiro, the Attorney General of Pennsylvania, fed the myth about this being a pedophile scandal when he said the victims were little boys and girls. This is a lie. Anyone who actually reads the report knows it's a lie. Most were post-pubescent. This doesn't make the molestation okay. The guilty should be imprisoned, but it is wrong to give the impression that we were talking about 5-year-olds when more typically they were 15-year-olds. So what the hell is everyone making a big deal about? You guys, they were 15. It's fine, says Bill. They were tweens, not toddlers. I don't know if you saw Alan Dershowitz in the news this week, because Alan Dershowitz, the Harvard legal scholar who has been in the news because he's a Trump friend and a right-wing crazy guy now, he basically went on TV and he said something about how one of the victims was, and I'm quoting here, a 17-year and 10-month-old person. And again, the second you are counting someone's age with months, they're a child, legally speaking. So all these people are trying to defend something that is very indefensible. To be clear, the Catholic League is not formally connected to the Catholic Church. It's not technically Catholic then, and it's not really a league either. It's just Bill Donahue and his minions. However, Bill Donahue did once have an office for the Catholic League in a building owned by the Archdiocese of New York. He retains the support of a lot of conservative bishops. So I don't know how much we can really separate the Catholic League from the Catholic Church. But again, how broken is your moral compass when you are downplaying sexual assault against minors because you think that's part of your job description? It's not just one press release. They have been doing this for years, and it never makes sense. All of this, if we're defining the word pedophilia, this is not an argument about semantics. It's a strategy to drag empathy away from the victims and survivors who have been courageously speaking out and trying to make it seem like whatever the hell Donald Trump did is not that big of a deal. And this group is well funded, the Catholic League, and they're doing everything in their power to be like, you guys, it's wrong for them to use the word pedo because the kids were like 15, so calm down. All the more reason the rest of us should be calling this stuff out and rejecting the euphemisms, right? The only moral stance here is a very simple one. Sexual abuse of minors is sexual abuse. Full stop. It's not okay. It's never okay. I don't care if there are Democrats caught up in this scandal. Good. Screw them. Who cares? Get rid of them. If you can't bring yourself to say that and you're jumping to, it's not about little kids, it's about older kids, and it's not about pedophilia at all or molestation at all, it's about gay people. If that's the argument you're making, you lost this argument a long time ago. All right. What questions we got about that disturbing story? Guess what? Doesn't matter anyway. The crime was human trafficking and sexual abuse. The age just made it worse. That is very true. Thank you. So religious groups are redefining our most heinous crimes for us. It's what they love to do. They do. They don't want their pastors getting implicated. So they're like, you guys, it was a 17-year-old, relax. I heard some similar arguments from Republicans who didn't want to pass bills that would raise the age of marriage to 18. There are some states where the marital age is like 16 and possibly younger with your parents' permission. And there have been efforts to try to like not do that and change it to 18 across the board. And Republicans in some of these states are like against that. Why? I don't want to know. It's creepy. So the PhD is only used to gaslight everyone to say priests are not the problem. Yeah, I mean, Bill Donahue doesn't really talk about his PhD in the press releases. It's not part of his signature. But when he was trying to say pedophilia doesn't really matter because it's not technically that, it's not from the pedophilia region of France, then he breaks out the PhD. And I don't know what it's in or where he got it from. I'm sure I knew that at some point, but disturbing. I don't know how these people sleep at night. There's never a good reason to discuss the age difference of abused children to somehow try to make the perpetrators less monstrous. Then they try to blame LGBTQ people. WTF. Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, I feel like I've been saying the same thing about conservatives in general forever. Like, how do you not have your conscience eating at you all the time when I see all the horrible things you're doing? And they just live in a different reality. Nothing matters. Truth doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. Unless the facts might help you clarify who's a pedophile and who's just a molester. Then you'll break out facts in the dictionary. It's the only time they do that. All right, I'm jumping to a different story. 1 second. Okay. I'm going to get back to that Krauss stuff in just a minute. I need a break from the Epstein stuff for a second. Let me talk about just a totally different story. Okay. If you visit New Hampshire and you specifically visit Somersworth and you go to that city, you will see near City Hall this right here. Like there's City Hall right behind me there in the picture. And in front of it, there's this little island on the road. And you could see two flags up there. The one on your left, as you are seeing the screen, is like the seal for the city of Somersworth. And the one on the right is the flag they decided to put up that day. Now, some of you may have seen the thing right here. What is that thing in between the flags? That would be a Ten Commandments monument. That's not even what the story is about, but it's there, and that shouldn't be there. But again, that's not the point. It's been there for like decades and decades and decades. It would be really hard to remove it at this point because tradition, but it is there. Anyway, the city has, I'm not talking about the Ten Commandments monument. We will talk just about the flags. So I said one of them is the city's flag. The other one is something else. And that something else for the past several years has been up to the people who live in that city. Basically, they have a flag policy that's pretty broad. It's open to any person or group or organization that promotes benevolence, tolerance, and diversity. And basically, anyone in the city can apply to have their flag or their group's flag put up on that second flagpole. They've been doing this for years now. In fact, in 2018, you can look this up, there was like a little kerfuffle because an atheist group wanted to put up a flag and some people got mad. Whatever, they had a right to do it. It wasn't like an evil flag or anything. And the city said, it's fine with us. And then the controversy died down. Whatever, not a big deal. But the thing about public forums is that at some point, requests are going to make people uncomfortable. And that is what happened last month when a member of the Satanic Temple, who goes by the amazing name Soren Malcontent, Soren requested and got approval to put up a flag for the Satanic Temple. And this is what happened on Halloween. Let me show you this right here. There's the Ten Commandments monument. If I zoom up here, if I scroll up here, there's the city flag on your left, and right above me, you have a black and white flag with Baphomet right up there. It's a very cute little flag representing the Satanic Temple. So they put that on the flagpole. And whatever, it was on Halloween day, and that was it. The mayor approved the request without much pushback or anything, so that's nice. And when Halloween came by and that flag was put up there, Soren Malcontent even delivered an invocation. And he ended it with these words: that which will not bend must break, and that which can be destroyed by truth should never be spared its demise. It is done. Hail Satan. Beautiful. Just beautiful. So that could have been the end of this story. Like, the Satanists requested their flag go up. The city said, okay, we're done now. Halloween's over. But a few days after the flag went up, the city council suddenly decided to change the entire flag policy. Check this out. This is from a city council meeting right here. And you can see at the top here, this is from Mayor Matt Girding, dated November 5th. Update on the flag policy. And I'm going to scroll down right here. To align with current legal guidance and to further protect the city from abuse of this policy, I am recommending a revision to clearly state that flags flown at Citizens Place represent the expression and values of the city of Somersworth, and the flagpole is not a public forum for open requests. So basically what the mayor is saying is that that second flag was open to anybody, but that means the city can't discriminate. The city gets to decide who goes up there. They got to put together a set of rules and all that stuff, and that could lead to problems. So we're just going to not have it be a public forum anymore. It is now a city-owned flagpole, and the city gets to decide what goes up there. Which, to be fair, they do have the right to do that. Like, if they called it a public forum and they said no to certain groups, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. But if the city says no one gets to request their flag go up, different story. The policy, I want to show you this too. That same policy says, so what should we put up on the second flagpole? And there was a list. He said, for next year, here's what we should do for that second flagpole. Let's have a coexist flag, a flag for Ireland and Greece and Earth Day and England and Arbor Day and POWs, emergency medical services. What else here? We got a pride flag, army flag, Juneteenth. They got a lot of flags scheduled to go up over the next year. Indigenous people flag. I don't have a problem with all those. That's fine. They seem to be trying to be diverse, but it still prevents minority groups that are known to stir controversy from time to time from participating in the rotation, right? One city council member even said at that meeting, these new rules are there to prevent strange or oddball groups from making the city put up its symbols. That city council member did not offer any specific examples. But then, if they pass this policy, which, by the way, spoiler, they did, now I'm wondering, well, if it's a city-owned flagpole and Citizens Place is now a city-owned area, why is that Ten Commandments monument still there? Take it down. It's not the citizens anymore. And in fact, at that city council meeting that they had this month, one of the board members, Paul Goodwin, he actually brought this up. He said it was hypocritical to remove public access to the second flagpole while ignoring the elephant in the room that there is a giant granite monument to Christianity directly next to these flagpoles. Very true. And one response was that, yeah, it's a Christian monument, but it's part of our town's heritage. It's not promoting religion, even though it's absolutely promoting religion. But in any case, they did not make a decision about the Ten Commandments monument. They did, however, approve the flag policy. And let me show you what the Satanic Temple said about all this. The Satanic Temple issued this statement. The Satanic Temple flies its flag over a city hall in New Hampshire as part of a public forum. There's our friend Soren up there giving the invocation. But look right here. Somersworth's decision is lawful, yet revealing. It mirrors a broader trend in which governments withdraw from pluralism when its demands become real. And then skipping ahead, the fleeting presence of the Satanic Temple's flag exposed how quickly civic commitments to pluralism can erode when tested in practice. For what it's worth, I called up Mayor Girding, or I emailed him. Basically, I wanted to know about the possible legal concerns he had. Like, if he adopted this policy, I wanted to know what his legal concerns were, if he was worried about the Ten Commandments monument. I wanted to know if he pushed this policy in response to the Satanic Temple putting up their flag, or was it a coincidence? Was this the plan all along? I also wanted to know his examples of the old policy being abused, because that's what he wrote in his memo. He has not written back to me yet. I did talk to Soren Malcontent, however, and he told me he actually initially requested that the Satanic flag go up all of October, a month-long celebration, and the city initially said yes, with the exception of like one day that someone else already had dibs on, and that was fine. But eventually, once the Satanic Temple delivered the flag to the city, they were like, they must have opened it up, and they're like, you know what, we're going to give you one day. That came after the mayor specifically requested to know more about the Satanic Temple. And then within a week, the policy changed. Is it a coincidence? You be the judge. I did ask Malcontent, like, did you want to put up the flag just so you could screw over the public forum? And he told me no. He said, my goal was representation, which is awesome. So here's the thing. If you have a public forum, you got to allow everyone to sign up, and you have to have a really good reason if you're going to say no to it. But again, if the city wants to close that public forum, that's their right. But the fact that they changed it shows you how they love to brag about openness and diversity and welcoming people from all voices until something makes them super uncomfortable. The Satanic Temple did not do anything offensive. They just exist. But apparently that is enough to expose the weakness of this town's actual commitment to pluralism. I don't know. They did not have to change the policy, but I think they did not want a repeat of this incident to happen again. Maybe some group, like, they also don't like, but like really don't like, wants them to put up a flag. They don't want to be in a position where they have to say no. So they just said, to hell with everything. And honestly, if a single black flag with a pentagram is all it takes to make a city abandon its principles, I think the problem is not the Satanists anymore. It sounds like it's the city's leadership. I will pause there. What questions, thoughts we have here? By the way, oh, I saw that. We have Soren Malcontent in our chat. So everyone say hi to Soren and thank him for what he has done. Thank you so much. The flag still flies at my house now. Yes. Excellent. Everyone can see it. And maybe it's a public forum and we can all request to put up our flags on your front lawn. It never occurs to these people to just take down the damn flagpole. Seriously, they could totally. Is that the moral of all of our stories today? They could totally do nothing. Instead, they're choosing to do the absolute worst possible thing. You mean like pluralism isn't supposed to be a U.S. value? Clutches non-existent Christian pearls. Love it. They want to close the public forum that is centered by a Ten Commandments monument. I think they talked about we could just donate the Ten Commandments monument to a local church and be done with it, and then we're not going to get sued over it. I think now that there's some attention to this thing, again, maybe they're worried they could face a lawsuit over a Ten Commandments monument. Honestly, I don't even know how successful it would be at this point because they could just say it's tradition and the Supreme Court likes that. But again, you don't have to do this. You can just get rid of it. No one will care after like a week. One news cycle, it's over. Give it to a church. They could put it up on the front lawn. All right, I'm jumping to a different story. 1 minute. Okay, let's talk about Lawrence Krauss. A lot of people were asking me to talk about this. I posted some stuff on social media. And by the way, Rebecca Watson of Skeptic, she made an entire video about a lot of this stuff. I think it just came out today as I'm doing this segment right now. You should go watch her video. It's really good. I cover some of the stuff, some of it's different, but we'll see, whatever. I don't have a script for this or at all. I'm just talking off the cuff here. But I wanted to show you what we are talking about, which this is just a great exchange. This is from last year. The date is December 8th, 2024. Are you the actual real Lawrence Krauss? Can I ask you a physics question? Because Lawrence Krauss, of course, is a very famous cosmologist. He's written a lot of books about physics. I will admit they were very good books about physics. Can I ask you a physics question? Sure. What was Jeffrey Epstein like? Beautiful. And the reason this has been going viral for a little while here is because because Jeffrey Epstein's emails, some of them were released over the past couple of weeks, and Lawrence Krauss plays a role in many of those emails. And that's the thing I wanted to talk to you about. Now, in order to make sense of what those emails were about, you need to know a couple of things. One is that I have talked about Lawrence Krauss in recent months because he just came out with a book called The War on Science. And as I said in several videos, I would love to see a book about the war on science taking place right now, where the Trump administration is defunding science and research, and RFK Jr. is spreading misinformation about science. There is a war on science right now. But Lawrence Krauss's book, which has contributions from just the worst people, all of whom are like, I was canceled because I did something stupid. That book is all about how like STEM scholarships and DEI initiatives are the real problem with science. And they don't talk really about Trump at all. And their excuse is like, well, the book was written before the Trump administration. Doesn't matter. Republicans are still waging a war on science. That's never not been the case. Why are you wasting your time going after like Black women getting into labs through a scholarship or something? Just the dumbest people. Anyway, that's why I was mad at him before. But the thing you need to know about Lawrence Krauss now, when in regards to Epstein, let me show you this first. This is from 2011, and this is shortly after people started learning about who Jeffrey Epstein was and who his associates were. And I only bring up a couple things here. Last spring, this is in 2011, and this article from the Daily Beast says last spring in 2010, Epstein completed a 13-month prison sentence for soliciting from a minor in Palm Beach. So in 2010, he was punished for that crime. And everyone in his circles knows about that. I feel like we should just use that as a starting point here. Everyone knows what this guy did. So what did Lawrence Krauss have to do with any of this? If I scroll down this article, here's what Professor Lawrence Krauss, a theoretical physicist and author of a book, has planned scientific conferences with Epstein in St. Thomas and remained close with him throughout his incarceration. And let's see what Krauss said about this. Jeffrey, they're on a first name basis. Jeffrey has surrounded himself with beautiful women and young women, but they are not as young as the ones that were claimed. As a scientist, I always judge things on empirical evidence, and he always has women ages 19 to 23 around him, but I've never seen anything else. So as a scientist, my presumption is that whatever the problems were, I would believe him over other people. And though colleagues have criticized him over his relationship with Epstein, Krauss insists, I don't feel tarnished in any way by my relationship with Jeffrey. I feel raised by it. This, again, I have to repeat, this is after Epstein was in jail for over a year for sexually abusing a child. They all knew it. And Krauss is like, well, you people are silly. The people around him are ages 19 to 23. I've done the math. Never younger. What are you talking about? So that's a horrible quotation. And I don't want to put words in Rebecca Watson's mouth, but I think at the time she was writing about that. And I believe the way she puts it is she could not believe he said that. And she reached out to him to basically say, what? Did you actually say that? And he responded with, and I'm paraphrasing, uh-huh. And she's like, oh. And she wrote an article about that. Anyway, here's what's interesting now. These emails have started to come out from Jeffrey Epstein. And let me show you one of them here. This one has Rebecca at the bottom. This is the exchange she had with Lawrence Krauss, saying there's some disturbing stuff in that article. But I want you to look at this. Krauss writes to Jeffrey Epstein and says, just so you know, you can read from bottom up. You may be mad that I was blunt. Haven't heard from you. Hope all is well. And Epstein writes, no, it was appreciated. Thanks. And then Krauss writes, beyond anything else, you are my friend. I hope we can both always remember that, no matter what. Are you coming this weekend at all? Like, this is Lawrence Krauss is fangirling over Jeffrey Epstein, saying, hey, remember when I defended you a second ago in that Daily Beast article and I look horrible? I just want you to know you are my friend. And let's remember that no matter what. And are you coming? And what does Epstein write? No, I'm in Paris. Thanks. Even Epstein's like, dude, I don't want to hang out with you. Go away. So that is one exchange between Lawrence Krauss and Jeffrey Epstein. And that was in 2011. Okay, let me skip ahead a little bit to 2018. Because back in the day, BuzzFeed had a whole thing called BuzzFeed News. And BuzzFeed News had this whole article about Lawrence Krauss called The Unbeliever, which I don't love as a headline. But look at this. He became a celebrity for putting science before God. Now, Lawrence Krauss faces allegations of sexual misconduct. And shall we? It's been a while. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the facts of what BuzzFeed reported. And again, look at the date over there. It's 2018. But again, I'm just going to scroll down here. According to a woman, she said Krauss made a comment about her eye makeup and got very close to her face. Suddenly, he lifted her by the arms and pushed her onto the bed beneath him, forcibly kissing her and trying to pull down the crotch of her tights. She said she struggled to push him off. When he pulled out a condom, she said, she got out from under him, said, I have to go, and rushed out of the room. Krauss said it was consensual, but the woman said that is untrue. It was definitely predatory. I didn't want that to happen. It was not consensual. So that's disturbing. BuzzFeed News has learned that that incident is one of many wide-ranging allegations of Krauss's inappropriate behavior over the last decade, including groping women, ogling, I never figured out the pronunciation of that one, and making sexist jokes to undergrads, and telling an employee at Arizona State University, where he's a tenured professor, that he was going to buy her birth control so she didn't inconvenience him with maternity leave. And in response to complaints, two institutions, Case Western in Ohio and the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics in Ontario, have quietly restricted him from their campuses. So, yikes. What else do we got here? In lengthy emails to BuzzFeed News, Krauss denied all of the accusations, calling them false and misleading defamatory allegations. When asked why multiple women over more than a decade have separately accused him of misconduct, he said the answer was obvious. It's because his provocative ideas have made him famous. It's because he's famous, y'all. It is common knowledge that a celebrity attracts all forms of negative attention from many different angles, Krauss said in a December email. There is no pattern of discontent revealed here that suggests any other explanation. You guys, they're all just accusing him of very specific things because he's famous. Totally. What else do we got in this article, which, by the way, is still online? But if we go down, there were a couple other things I want to show you. Krauss's reputation took a hit in April of 2011. This is what I just showed you. After he publicly defended Epstein, a wealthy financier who was convicted of soliciting prostitution from an underage girl and spent 13 months in a Florida jail. Epstein was one of the Origin Project's major donors. The Origin Project is something Krauss was launching at Arizona State. It was like his big thing. He got funding from Epstein. And again, that may not be a problem before all the stuff went down, but afterwards, maybe find different funding or something. Krauss told the Daily Beast his support of the financier was based purely on the facts. And then he said that stupid quote I read to you. What else we got here? Oh, hey, there was another undergraduate who goes by the initial A. A was an undergraduate who met him in 2008 at the American Atheist Convention. 3 years later, when she and other students walked into the bar at the same meeting in Des Moines, Iowa, A recalled, Krauss pulled over a chair for her and started running his hand up her leg under the table. I kind of shifted away, A said. He put his hand on again. I crossed my legs. He put his hand on again. Eventually, I had to physically turn my entire body. Yikes. What else we got here? What else? This is another situation. With conference delegates chatting over drinks, one of her friends asked Krauss for a selfie. As the woman held out her phone to take the picture, she said she saw Krauss reach over her friend's shoulder and grab her right breast. As soon as she reacted, which was instantaneously, she body checked him and then she spun around. And again, Krauss denies all of this. Oh, look at this. 4 former employees of Arizona State's Origins Project told BuzzFeed News that Krause's workplace behavior was sometimes offensive, calling him a sexist and a womanizer. At a dinner event at the school's university club in October of 2015, for instance, a 19-year-old undergraduate said she was left feeling acutely uncomfortable when he looked at her from head to toe, smirked, and never smirk. Smirking is no, and told her he liked the short jumper she was wearing. 2 eyewitnesses confirmed her account. In April 2016, an Origin staffer angrily posted on Facebook about how Krause suggested that I should dress up like a hula girl while advertising for an event. Another employee was so upset by his behavior, she started keeping a written record of offensive incidents. Said he understood why people didn't like to hire women of childbearing age because it isn't fair to have to pay maternity benefit, she wrote in one entry. Said he's going to buy me birth control so I don't get pregnant and inconvenience him. Asked if I was planning to get pregnant. I will say about all those incidents, they're all disturbing. I could also totally see someone who doesn't know how to be social, who's just socially awkward, doing a lot of those things and just making everyone uncomfortable. That stuff is not a crime. It just makes you like someone everyone else talks about. But the earlier stuff is definitely disturbing. Was there anything else here I wanted to mention? Anyway, so that article, that was the thing that came out in 2018, and the repercussions from that article were pretty major and pretty quick. After the article was published, a lot of atheist groups and event organizers just distanced themselves from Krause. Arizona State University said they were going to do an investigation into the matter, and they put him on paid leave while they did the investigation. And then they said, we're done with our investigation. And I think Lawrence Krause was like, you can't fire me, I quit. And he just retired on his own. And the report, I think, never came out. And that's kind of where we've been at ever since. Now, why do I bring all that up? A couple things. One is Lawrence Krause, the only thing I remember about that time, because this wasn't my story here, is that Krause put up a link on social media. It was like a multi-page, how big was this? Like a 9-page response to the BuzzFeed article. And he basically went through all his version of the story. He responds to all the allegations and why people are overreacting or misinterpreting what he said or did. And he goes through all of this. I'm not going to read all this for you again. This is several years old. But he did put out this long response to it. And it is messed up in some ways. I will tell you that when Arizona State finished their investigation, they did confirm reports that Krause groped a woman at a conference in Australia, violating their sexual harassment policy. And ASU, the reason they couldn't just magically fire Krause is because he was tenured. There's a process for that, and it's lengthy. And before they could complete that, Krause just announced he was going to retire. But there was one other thing he said. When he retired, he said this: my experience over the past 7 months has led me to surmise that even following such an outcome, if he was forgiven or reconciled or whatever, following such an outcome, I would no longer encounter a working environment at ASU that is conducive to continuing my active teaching, research, and service activities. And I remember hearing that and thinking there was something remarkably tone deaf about a person who is accused by multiple women at the school of inappropriate behavior, saying he's retiring because it's just too hard to work in this environment at ASU. So that wasn't great. So here's what's been happening this past week. For those of you who are not addicted to social media, one of the writers for that BuzzFeed article, that's Peter down here, he wrote, interesting to see Lawrence Krause cropping up in today's Epstein documents. No date or context for this, but our reporting at BuzzFeed News identified Epstein as a significant source of funding for Krause. And then this science journalist, Dan Garisto, said, by my count, there are 65 documents with emails between Krause and Epstein. In many of them, Krause seems to ask Epstein for advice about the allegations of sexual misconduct leveled toward him. Oh, really? Tell me more. And I want to show you this. This was in a Canadian news article about this, and it just summarized it really quickly. Look at this one. In late 2017, Mr. Krause returned to that friend, Epstein, with a request. He had himself been accused of sexual misconduct, allegations he denies, and he sent Mr. Epstein a copy of a draft response. This is like that 9-page response letter. Could use advice, Mr. Krause wrote in an email. Mr. Epstein's typo-ridden answer. Did you have sex with her? Condom? Did she take it? I wouldn't respond. By the way, this has nothing to do with anything, but if you've seen any of these emails, and I'm going to show you some of these emails, the one thing that was stunning is how bad the grammar is for every one of these well-connected, very wealthy people. None of them know how to write an email. I will beat myself over the head if I misspelled a word in an email I have already sent. And these guys are writing like they're on the toilet using one hand at all times. Anyway, let's see some of these emails. Here's what that journalist, Dan Garisto, said. Here's Krause emailing Epstein about the allegations detailed to him in BuzzFeed's email. Notably, Krause does not deny, number 6, that he groped a woman's breast during a selfie. Let's take a look at this one, shall we? Here is this, let's see what we can find here. At the very top, this is dated December of 2017. BuzzFeed News inquiry regarding allegations of sexual harassment. And this is Krause writing to Epstein. Important. Hi. And he's basically saying, this is what I'm going to write in response. So, Epstein, got any suggestions for me? Item number 1, allegation number 1. I did neck with that woman, but never forced myself upon her. Number 2, this is what I told you about. A student came to me for advice. I never did anything. Item 3, I have no idea about this. Number 4, it never happened. Number 5, this was on a cruise with my female companion. Number 6, I touched a woman's breast. Look at what he wrote for number 6. This one you know about. Shall we talk? Krause is going to Epstein. Mind you, this is years after Epstein has been in jail for doing what Epstein does. So that's creepy. He then sent Epstein a draft of that 9-page thing. And check this out. This is a different email. I'm just going to, at the top of your screen, you could see December 11th, 2017. Here's Epstein writing in, again, the worst English and grammar ever. Normally, their strategy will be to take back your defense to the accusers and attack each one. If they find you are right, they will leave it out of the article and only go with the conflicted. I think you should include short, concise cover letter that you would like published in its entirety. It can reference your attachment that you will put on your website. That goes into more details, but in general, he's saying you should just say these are false. They were either investigated and found lacking or ignored, etc. Often they throw out the near publishing date just to get you to answer. That is Epstein's advice to Krause. Just saying, just tell him you didn't do it. Write a little cover letter. Tell him to read your entire statement. And usually, don't be worried when they said we're going to publish soon. They just do that to scare you. Who goes to Jeffrey Epstein for advice on how to deal with allegations of misconduct? Probably someone who knows Jeffrey Epstein has been accused of sexual misconduct. And what does Lawrence Krause say? Importance, hi. Thanks. I need to get this or something to them quickly. I do feel the need to respond to each of their claims. Otherwise, they would say, I don't deny them. We'll include a short preamble. I'm going to CC the letter to the BuzzFeed lawyers. I figure I will see whether the BuzzFeed story gets any traction at all or appears before putting it up on my website or tweeting and Facebooking it. He's basically like, all right, I'll write up this response, but maybe no one cares about BuzzFeed News and no one will notice this article, in which case, why would I waste my time with that? Well, what happened after that? So let's forward to a couple months later. Here's another email. Not that one. This one. Look at the date here. This is from Monday, February 26, 2018. Was it right after? I need to double check. When was that BuzzFeed article published again? The BuzzFeed article was published February 22nd, 2018. And this is a couple days after that. I had my call with the Bulletin. The Bulletin is like, you know, the famous doomsday clock that says the world is like 3 minutes from nuclear meltdown or whatever. Lawrence Krauss was like the guy in charge of that, or at least one of the dudes at the top. And he says, I had my call with them. I'm going to take a voluntary leave as chair of the board, allowing me and them to make nice statements about me and how the board appreciates me, has never had a complaint, how professional I am, and how they hope I will return after this has subsided. The alternative was worse. Look at this dude doing doing PR in real time here. I'm going to step down so they can say how awesome I am and I can say how awesome I am, and then I'll just go back when everything dies down. To which, what does Jeffrey say in response to all this? I'm sorry. Here's the whole response. Just a few hours. Was it hours before? I can't tell anymore. Jeffrey Epstein wrote, yikes. And then what else does Lawrence Krauss say? Lawrence Krauss wrote, they claimed they had 1,500 hits. This is the atomic 3 minutes doomsday clock people. They claimed they had 1,500 hits for their announcement about me and BuzzFeed, which doesn't seem like a lot. But they thought so, and they're getting pressure from various of their supporters and senior people, ... This 3-week thing may be true, like the life cycle of these articles, but I wonder if I will ever really recover. I wish they would indict Trump or something right now. Great. I wish Trump got indicted so no one would talk about how I allegedly did all these sex creepy things. That's great. That's part of the email chain. Do we have anything else here? Anyway, what else did we have from our buddy Lawrence? Oh, this may be our favorite. This may be the best one in the bunch. This is a couple months later. Look at the very bottom. I'll remove myself here. Tina Brown, the famous magazine editor, said to a group of people, the Women in the World Summit opens April 12th and runs through April 14th with a power-packed agenda of remarkable female newsmakers sharing their stories of male misbehaviors. And these dudes sent this email around. Lawrence Krauss sent it to Epstein. Look at the very top there. On April 5th, Lawrence Krauss sent that out and said, enjoy. Women talking about men being annoying. And what does Epstein say in response to... Oh, look at this. From Lawrence Krauss to Jeffrey Epstein. Let's do a Men of the World conference. Kevin Spacey, Bill Clinton, Al Franken, Woody Allen. And I can't tell if Lawrence Krauss is putting his name on that list or if that's part of his signature line. But I don't know. I think this is what passes for humor in creeper circles. That one's just friggin' weird to me. What else was there to show you from this batch? Oh, there was one other thing that got some traction online, which is one of the emails highlighted how Lawrence Krauss wanted Jeffrey Epstein to fund a thing he wanted to do. And it's called the New Origins Project Presents Strange Bedfellows, which honestly, given everything I just said, bedfellows is not the word you want to be using right now. But they said, we're going to bring together cultural icons, celebrities, movie stars to talk with famous scientists. And it's moderated by Lawrence Krauss. And they want to make this a TV show. And look, first season, we have 23 participants who have already agreed in principle. We'll have Johnny Depp. Great. Courtney Love and Marilyn Manson talking creativity in music with Nobel laureates. We'll have Woody Allen talk about the human condition with Noam Chomsky. Like, just stop there. This is not a good project. It's not going to end well. Look at number 8. Barack Obama and Steven Pinker, which sounds maybe interesting. Pinker isn't great, but like... Anyway, look at the bottom of this. Budget. We wanted $1.2 million for the episodes. It would cost us a lot more money for fees, venues, transportation, etc. This is a project Krauss wanted to do, and apparently he emailed Epstein about this. I don't think it got funded for whatever reason. I think the last thing I'm going to say is that what's Lawrence Krauss up to these days? Well, he just announced that he's doing a book tour event And where is this taking place? It's taking place at the Free Speech Union of Canada. And they're having this event for his new book, The War on Science, which has nothing to do with anything about RFK or Donald Trump. But they're doing this later this month, November 27th. By the way, you know what the Free Speech Union of Canada is? It is a group. I'll just show you this right here. Here's a post from Lawrence Krauss from a couple years ago, I think. Today, the Free Speech Union of Canada officially launched its website, and it is my distinct honor to be its inaugural chairman of the board. Oh, this is from February of this year. Lawrence Krauss began a group called the Free Speech Union of Canada because, you know, in Canada, you're not allowed to say controversial things. So he started his own group, and now he's promoting his book tour as if it is, look, you guys, I got invited to speak to this group. It's his group. It's just weird. So anyway, how's that for a deep dive into what Lawrence Krauss is up to? It is weird, and it's always been weird for many, many years. And it's sad because, like I said, I'm not kidding. His books are pretty good. He's a good writer. I liked when he was challenging Christianity and calling out religious bullshit. But also, there are plenty of other people who do that who don't have a gazillion allegations. And the arrogance is, I don't know if that's the right word, to be like, all these women are coming after me because, you know, I'm famous. They all want me. It is creepy. All right, I'll take questions. Oh, thank you for that donation. Love your work. I appreciate that. Thank you, Danger of Mouse. Everyone who interacted with this dude sound like infatuated school kids. No kidding. And the way all of them, they all write with like weird ass grammar. None of them know how to spell. They all have PhDs and are considered brilliant in their fields. Not a single one of them knows what a punctuation mark is. I think The Daily Show did a whole bit about how that's the true takeaway from the Epstein emails. No one knows how to write or spell anything. No wonder they like ChatGPT so much and are obsessed with AI. It'll correct and make them not look dumb. How would you like to be the editor of their books and you're reading like draft 1 and it's just these types of emails? Because it didn't happen in front of him. It didn't happen. That ain't science. Yes. The Jeffrey Epstein stuff. I didn't see it. When I was with him, he only had girls 19 to 23. Why? Did you check their IDs? How do you know that? I don't know how you tell someone's age with that specificity. To me, it's funny how MAGA's people think we're going to be scared if any of our guys are on the list, but we say no, if those dudes too. No kidding. How many people are like, you know, if the Epstein files are released, Bill Clinton's going down? And to a person, every single Democrat I've seen online is like, so? You think I have an allegiance to Bill Clinton? Democrats who have tons of problems, one of their problems is not that they live in a cult of personality. Like, you want to take Barack Obama down at this point? I don't care. Go do it. It doesn't matter. I'm not like, my entire life does not revolve around whoever's in charge of the Democratic Party. That's not my personality. I'm inclined to think they might have done some of that bad grammar on purpose to make it harder to search their records, but am I giving them too much credit? Yes, I think you're giving them way too much credit. They did not think anyone else would see these emails. And I wonder if this is how Epstein types. So then they just started being lazy in their own emails. I don't know. It's weird. And again, I want to stress, if the only thing we knew about Epstein is he's given a lot of money to fund science for whatever reason to cover up the horrible stuff he's doing, I kind of understand why these guys want to be in with him. He gives them money to do the stuff they want to do. But all of the things we just talked about happened after Epstein was in jail for soliciting a minor. And that's just the one we knew about. Apparently, there was much more going on that we're now finding out about. So they knew about this stuff and they kept on going with it. Oh, one other thing I would mention. One of the things Krauss said in response to all of this is that even after the BuzzFeed article or something, or maybe after he said that stuff defending Epstein to the Daily Beast in 2011, he was invited to the Center for Inquiry events. And, they had a sexual harassment policy. Clearly, that group was not scared of him. Maybe, I don't remember if that was after BuzzFeed or not. But one, atheist groups historically do not have very good policies on these things. And two, the Center for Inquiry has become like a right-wing anti-trans organization. So like, it doesn't surprise me that they would invite Lawrence Krauss to things despite all the stuff he's done. They invite Richard Dawkins to everything. They work with Richard Dawkins, and he said vile stuff about trans people and Muslims. So I don't know that that's your best defense. All right. Yay, I can go to another story. I don't know the answer to that. All right. I did a story last week about this very issue. I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, but there's been a big update to it that I wanted to share with you because it's very disturbing. And it involves a school district in Colorado, near Pueblo, Colorado. And the reason I brought this up is this is the school we are talking about. It's called Riverstone Academy, and they build themselves as a tuition-free public elementary school. I'm not sure why you put tuition-free in there. That's how public education works, but it's a brand new elementary school that's part of a public school district. But this is where it got weird. They said, we have a Christian foundation to help students grow. Like, why would a public school say that? That's weird. And if you scroll down on their website, they also say, what's the curriculum? It includes Master Books Social Studies and Berean Builders Science. And those two companies, publishers, those are well known as Christian publishers who write textbooks for like the homeschooling Christian market. So these are books infused with Bible shit when you are teaching kids about social studies and science, which is really not where you want your Jesus. So like, why is this school using Christian propaganda in a public school? It's messed up. And one of the things I pointed out is it seems like the local public school district didn't really know that this place was a Christian school. Because as I said in that previous video, District 49 in Colorado, which is the district that this Riverstone Academy is part of, like a lot of school districts, you know how public school districts have to provide special ed services, and maybe they have to help students with disabilities. And if you're in a big school district, they hire people to handle that stuff. If you're in a smaller school district or a rural school district, maybe that's out of your budget. Maybe you don't know how to specifically handle that stuff, even though you have to legally. So they outsource it to something in Colorado that's known as a Board of Cooperative Educational Services, BOCES. And basically, BOCES fill in gaps for public school districts indirectly. So you might say, we have a contract with this organization. They handle our special ed. They handle other issues for us that we can't handle ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. I kind of get that. And those BOCES might work with several different school districts, because some of them are going to need those resources more than others. Now, when we talked about this before, the issue was that the guy in charge of the Education Re-envisioned Board of Cooperative Educational Service, his name is Ken Witt. He's the dude who's like, he's contracted to work with this district. He's the guy that called Riverstone Colorado's first public Christian school. He said that at a board meeting in October, and that's the first time it seemed a lot of people even knew this was a public Christian school. How does that even make any sense? Why are we outsourcing to this organization that is now working with what should be a private Christian school? This is messed up. And there's a news outlet called Chalkbeat Colorado focusing on education. They looked into this arrangement and they said when all the paperwork was going through for this new school, there was no mention that it was a Christian school. So it looks like people were hiding this for a long time. And now when the Colorado Department of Education learned this was happening, they wrote a letter to District 49 and to Ken Witt, who is in charge of that BOCES, basically saying, hey, what's going on here? And the reason the state wants to know about this is obviously public education is funded by taxpayers. And the way this works is once the school year begins, public school districts have to tell the state, we have X number of students enrolled in our district. Therefore, we need this much money to fund all of this. And the state's like, got it. Here's the cash in giant bags with dollar signs on them, I assume. So the state wrote a letter to District 49 saying, hey, we heard you are working with a Christian school and we want to know. There are about 30 students who go to that school. When you send us your numbers, are you going to include those 30 students as if the state is responsible for paying the public education for a Christian school? Or are you not going to include those 30 students because it doesn't seem like you should? And Ken Witt, the guy who's like who's spearheading all of this, he told the state, hell yeah, we're going to count those 30 kids. They're part of the district. And the superintendent of the school district said, yeah, I am going to include them, but if you tell me not to, then I won't. Basically saying, leave me the hell out of this. You guys work out whether those kids are included in the district or not. It's not my call. Stop being mad at me. And so that's kind of what we're waiting for. We want to know if the state thinks it has to pay for these students at a Christian school. So that is where I left off. Last time I talked about this, I'm wondering, is the state going to do something? Is there going to be a lawsuit over this? We don't know yet. But more importantly, where did this idea even come from? Who thought this would be a good idea? And guess what? Chalkbeat Colorado is on top of this once again. And we could thank reporter Ann Shimke for reporting on this. Guess what she found? She got access to public emails sent by the attorney for a neighboring school district to District 49, basically saying, hey, listen, we want to build a school in another school district. That would be this Christian school we're talking about. We want to build a school in another school district because there's space here, I assume, but it's going to be part of your school district. Are you okay with this? And this had to be legally worked out because it's not normally done this way. And check out what Chalkbeat Colorado found here. In the June 4th email, Pueblo County School District 70 attorney Brad Miller wrote to the district school board and superintendent seeking permission for a public education cooperative he also represents, because this guy's the attorney for the Christian school as well. Can we open a school with 30 students within district boundaries? And this is the kicker. He wrote that the cooperative would then work with Alliance Defending Freedom, which is a right-wing legal group, to test the legalities around the issue of whether a public school may provide religious education. This attorney who works for the Christian school and also works for this public school district said, hey, can we build a new school right here? Why are we doing it? Because a right-wing legal group wants to know if we could provide religious education using taxpayer dollars. It's in writing. It's in the email. And then he explained in that email that Alliance Defending Freedom had hosted him when the Supreme Court heard oral arguments in a case about whether a Catholic charter school could open up in Oklahoma. Quick note about that. What is he talking about? Last year, maybe a couple years ago in Oklahoma, they tried. Ryan Walters, the former superintendent of public instruction there, he helped get taxpayer funding for a brand new charter school that was going to be a Catholic charter school. It would have been the first taxpayer-funded Catholic school in the nation. They did that on purpose. And this got all the way up to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court said, absolutely not, that's illegal, and they shut it down. Ryan Walters and those conservatives, they appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court. And again, I mentioned this earlier in the broadcast, Amy Coney Barrett had ties to the people involved in that case. She sat out, and the rest of the justices heard that case, and they voted 4-4. It was a tie. What does a tie mean at the Supreme Court? The earlier decision stays. So that's why the Catholic charter school is not a thing in Oklahoma. And so back to what this lawyer was saying. He explained that Alliance Defending Freedom hosted him after the Supreme Court heard oral arguments about that case. The case resulted in a 4-4 tie, and so the question did not get answered. Alliance Defending Freedom asked me if I could find a way for a parallel case to be initiated out of Colorado. So the right-wing legal group goes to this lawyer who works for a public school district, and they're like, look, we lost in Oklahoma. Can you launch a taxpayer-funded religious school in Colorado? Sneak it in, why don't you? And we'll try again. Because it didn't work last time, maybe it'll work this time. So the only reason they built this school, we are now finding out, is because it is a test case. Conservatives want the state of Colorado to pay for the education of this Christian school, the kids at this Christian school, or they want the state to say no because they're ready to go. They want to fight this in court. That's why they're doing this. Those 30 kids are pawns in this experiment. The email suggests that none of this is an accident. Like, they're doing this on purpose. This is a deliberate attempt to shove religion into a public school system. So the conservatives know how this is going to play out. Just to repeat this, if the Colorado Department of Education says we are not giving you money for those 30 kids at the Christian school, then Alliance Defending Freedom is going to sue the state over that, saying that's part of the public school district, you have to fund it. And if the state of Colorado does pay for those 30 students, then you could bet church-state separation groups are going to sue the state of Colorado over this. Because how dare you pay for what should be private religious education? Either way, this is going to court. This is the plan all along, because none of these people give a shit about public education at all. The only reason they would like public education is as a vessel to spread religious propaganda. That's all it's good for in these people's eyes. So the 30 students at Riverstone Academy, they are pawns, and all these ideological actors are trying to destroy church-state separation. They're not going to stop until this gets in front of the Supreme Court. And hopefully this time, I guess, Amy Coney Barrett will not recuse herself and give them what they want. So this is the blueprint that they're working off of. It's so disturbing. They failed so many times to get Christianity promoted in schools by hiring chaplains. They're trying that. They're trying to force the 10 Commandments in public schools, and they're failing at that. And now they're trying this way. They're going to keep litigating this until they get what they want. And maybe the most damning thing about it is what it says about everybody's priorities. Children are being treated as subjects in a political experiment. The school's religious mission is being kept hidden from the very people running the system that they expect to bankroll it. Riverstone Academy isn't just violating church-state separation. They are gambling with kids' education. Because how good do you think the education is at that school right now? They don't even want to be there. They're just there so they could file this lawsuit. They're not there because they want to teach those kids anything. So I hope they don't get away with this. I mean, and if they do, you can bet other school districts across the country, especially in red states, are going to try to duplicate this however they can and then get taxpayer money to pay for religious education. Some states already do that with voucher programs. They're trying to do it directly. Just pay for religious education directly. That's why this needs to be stopped quickly by Colorado. If not Colorado, then by the courts. I will stop there for now. What questions we got here? Yes, they'll fund it until a state takes the bait. Absolutely. That's how these groups operate. That's scary stuff. Our education is bad enough as it is. Yeah, last thing we need is taxpayer dollars going to fund religious indoctrination. That's what these people are going for. All right, one more story for you. I have my guess. What was the name for that one? I missed it, Den. Oh, that's not what I had. I had quail. I was wrong. All right. Last story I wanted to do tonight. Let's talk about the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, the USCCB. It's a very conservative group of Catholic leaders in the United States, and they meet every now and then to discuss whatever it is they discuss, their sex lives, things like that, I assume. But they said they met last week to spend time in prayer and fraternal dialogue. And also, they made sure to carve out some time to figure out how they can make the lives of transgender people even worse. And specifically, they codified a plan to forbid Catholic hospitals from providing gender affirming care. And let me tell you where this is coming from. You may have heard Catholic hospitals are like slowly taking over the country, which is very true. For a lot of people, the only hospital near them is a Catholic hospital. Sometimes Medicare or Medicaid is only going to cover procedures for in-network providers, and sometimes those providers are Catholic hospitals. And the thing about it is there are rules about what Catholic hospitals will do and what they won't do. They won't help you with an abortion. They will not do anything about surrogacy. They won't do in vitro fertilization. They will not give men a vasectomy, things like that, because it goes against Catholic doctrine. Well, the last time they updated their rules was in 2018. And I'll show you what I mean by this a little later. Last time they updated their rule book was in 2018. And they didn't say anything about trans people. And this leads, especially in recent years, to a lot of questions about, well, what are Catholic hospitals allowed to provide to trans patients who may want to transition? And this is where there have been some issues because doctors want to help them, but the hospitals say, we don't think you're allowed to do that because Catholic. And so one of the things the Catholic Church did, or at least the USCCB did, is a couple of years ago, look at the date line here, March of 2023, they issued some guidance to Catholic hospitals. And specifically, they said a couple things here that are disturbing. Look over here. As an example of immediate concern, the committee cites the interventions advocated by many in society as treatments for what is termed gender dysphoria or gender incongruence. These might involve surgical or chemical techniques, yada, yada. As such interventions do not respect the fundamental order of the human person as an intrinsic unity of body and soul with a body that is sexually differentiated, the committee says that Catholic healthcare services must not provide them. So if you want gender affirming care, it violates human dignity that God gave you, so you're not allowed to do it. It's basically what they said. And then ironically, the very next paragraph here says, you should always try to mitigate the suffering of those who struggle with gender incongruence, but also, sorry, if they're suffering because you're not letting them transition, let them suffer. That's basically the guidance they offered in 2023, thinking, I know the rule book doesn't say anything about this, so here's some guidance. Don't help people who need your help. That was in 2023. Now, that wasn't the only thing. In 2024, the Vatican decided to chime in on this matter, and this is when Pope Francis was still around. He signed off on a document. Let me show it to you on the Vatican's website here. It's called Dignitas Infinita, infinite dignity, which is a very ironic phrase for what I'm about to show you. And among the many things they said in this document, let me see if I could find one thing specifically that I was looking for. Here we go. There is a whole section in this document called Some Grave Violations of Human Dignity. And what do they talk about in here? Oh, the poverty. Yes, that is an affront to human dignity. We should abolish poverty or do what we can to eradicate poverty. I like that. War. War is definitely bad. Right there with you, Pope. The travail of migrants. Yes, we treat refugees like crap, and that's horrible. I agree. Human trafficking. Yes, also bad. Sexual abuse. Hey, good for the church. Also bad. Violence against women is bad. I'm liking this. Abortion. Really? We're sticking this one on the same list? That doesn't belong there. Surrogacy. That's apparently very bad, allowing people to have babies. Euthanasia and assisted death. They don't like that. The marginalized. Oh, now we're back to good stuff. Yeah, we don't want to marginalize people with disabilities. Of course we don't. And then here we go. Sections 55 through 60 are all sections 55 to 59. Oh, and 60. It's all about gender theory and sexual differentiation. So basically, the document never uses the word trans, but what it says is that anyone who subscribes to gender theory, so trans people and their allies, are making a personal self-determination. They are choosing to be trans, which is not how it works. That document also says sexual difference is, I got to show you this because it made me laugh. Look at number 58 here. I'll show this. Look at number 58. The foundational, another prominent aspect of gender theory is that it intends to deny the greatest possible difference that exists between living beings. No, it doesn't. Like, whether you have a certain type of genitalia is not the biggest difference between you and other living things. Do you know how many living things there are? A blue whale and an amoeba are both living. They are very different. It has nothing to do with the size of their dick. What are they talking about? So basically, this document released by the Vatican, not only is it lying about what trans people are going through, it denies any kind of gender spectrum. It said that gender affirming operations threaten someone's unique dignity, which is not only not true, it's completely backwards. By their logic, if you're doing something that violates God's will for you, you shouldn't be getting an appendectomy. You shouldn't be getting LASIK. Don't take Ozempic, right? Like, all of these things are going against the body that God gave you. So why are you touching it? So that document was everything you have come to expect from a group of old men who have never had sex, at least legally speaking, that we know about. Much less understand the nuance of sex and gender, but they pretend to be experts. And so the Vatican signed off on this. And the question again is, well, what are Catholic hospitals supposed to do about any of this, right? And so that document was interesting that the Vatican put out because the Catholic hospital rulebook did not say any of these things. So let me jump to this. This is what the USCCB, the Council of Catholic Bishops, put out a couple of weeks ago. The last time they updated this book was 2018. They just updated it again. This is the 7th edition, and it's only 35 pages. And it's the rule book for what you can and cannot do in a Catholic hospital. And I'm going to scroll down. Where am I going to go to? Let's see where I want to go. I won't bore you with the scrolling. There we go. There is a section called, here we go, the professional patient relationship. And underneath here, The directives, these are the rules. Let's jump to 28 and 29. Those are the brand new ones. So let's see here. Since creation is prior to us and must be received as a gift, we have a duty to protect our humanity. That sounds great, which means accepting it and respecting it as it was created in order to respect the nature of the human person as a unity of body and soul. Catholic healthcare services must not provide or permit medical interventions, whether surgical, hormonal, or genetic, that aim not to restore, but rather to alter the fundamental order of the human body in its former function. This includes genetic engineering, that's not medical, interventions that aim to transform sexual characteristics of a human body into those of the opposite sex, or to nullify sexual characteristics of a human body. That is a long way of saying no gender affirming care. You're not allowed to do it at all for any reason. And then 29 is also new. Catholic healthcare services and providers must employ all appropriate resources to mitigate the suffering of those who experience gender incongruence or gender dysphoria, and to provide for the full range of their healthcare needs, employing only those that respect the fundamental order of the human body. So you can do anything in your power to ease the suffering of trans people, except anything that they actually want. That's the new rules they have sent to Catholic hospitals everywhere. It's just awful. And when it's not news, I mean, people knew this was going to happen, but when they issued the guidance in 2023 that predicted that this was going to happen, there were Catholic news outlets that talked to scholars and theologians. Look at this. This is from 2023. Scholars like this person from Loyola University, Chicago, who is a theologian who studies and has written about bioethics, criticized the document for reflecting a striking inability to conduct a basic moral analysis. This person told the National Catholic Review that the doctrinal note displayed next to zero knowledge of, experience with, or expertise in transgender persons and the complexities of Catholic healthcare, even less compassion or Christian virtue. Holy crap. That's what they were saying 2 years ago when these bishops were putting out their bigoted statements. And here is a theologian at a Catholic school saying these people are insane. And what did they do since they said that? Nothing. There's one more thing I wanted to show you from that same article. Look at this. The Bishops' Conference said the doctrinal note was developed in consultation with numerous parties, including medical ethicists, physicians, psychologists, and moral theologians. But several bioethicists who criticized the document told the National Catholic Review that it did not reflect the evolving science on gender dysphoria, nor the insights and lived experiences of transgender people. So the bishops are like, we talked to so many experts before we put this in writing, and all the actual experts are like, no, you didn't. You didn't talk to us. You didn't talk to trans people. We actually know what we're doing. But that's the thing. They cherry picked who they talked to, and then they said, don't worry, they agree with us on this. So that is disturbing. I want to show you one other thing, which is after they passed the 7th edition of the rule book, like, there are transgender Catholics who have spoken out. And I know maybe you have the thought I have, which is why are there transgender Catholics? Why are you still part of the church? The church does not want you in it. They don't even think you should exist. They say you don't exist. They think you're lying. But here's what trans Catholic people said. Catholic teaching upholds the invaluable dignity of every human life, and for many trans people, gender-affirming care is what makes this life livable, said Michael Sennett, a trans man who is active in his Massachusetts parish. And there's a ministry for trans people in the Catholic Church, New Ways Ministry, and their executive director, Francis DiBernardo, said that for many transgender Catholics he knows, the transition process was not just a biological necessity, but a spiritual imperative. That if they were not going to be living as authentic people in the way that they believe God made them, then transition becomes a necessary thing. That's what trans Catholics are saying. But again, they were not consulted about these rules. And again, I could say whatever I want about like, why are they in the church at all? But who cares what I think? It's not about me. But the Catholic Church doesn't care about them. They're not taking their wisdom into account here. So many trans people will tell you that transitioning is vital to living their authentic lives. And to be denied that opportunity, at least at Catholic hospitals, means that the Catholic Church would rather have them live a lie and be miserable in the process than give them the kind of care that would allow many of them to feel whole. And all of this is happening at the same time that Republican lawmakers are doing everything in their power to make trans health care impossible to access. Like they don't want Medicare or Medicaid covering it. They're passing the big, beautiful bill that shuts down a whole bunch of local hospitals that are secular hospitals. So it's harder and harder to get access to any kind of care. And the reason all this matters is because the USCCB, with very few exceptions, does not allow Catholic hospitals to perform procedures that violate Catholic doctrine. And if the hospitals violate the rule because they care about the patients more than the dogma, they could lose their affiliation with the church, which theoretically means they could lose their funding. It means the beginning of the end for a lot of those places. And even if those Catholic hospitals employ doctors and nurses who are good people who want to help their patients, those doctors and nurses are hamstrung and they cannot do what they know they need to do for those patients because of the stupid rule book that is not written by medical professionals. Like the Hippocratic Oath says do no harm, but the Catholic hospitals are like, don't worry about that. Just listen to whatever the Catholic Church wants. Put a big asterisk by do no harm, and you're allowed to do some harm if the Catholic doctrine demands it. It's so disturbing. And you should know just some basic stats here. Catholic hospitals get roughly 48 billion with the B dollars per year in taxpayer dollars from the government through Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements. And Catholic hospitals are taking over the country. From a report from a couple of years ago, 4 of the nation's 10 largest health systems are Catholic hospitals. The 10 largest Catholic health systems control 394 short-term acute care hospitals. And more than 30% of births in the US now happen in a Catholic hospital. So this is a growing problem because the hospitals taking over our country are now restricted as to what help they can actually provide. I will tell you, I wanted to leave on a brighter note somehow, which is there was an article that just came out from the 19th, which focuses on gender and politics and policy. And this is what they said, because Catholic hospitals are also anti-abortion. But this is what they said. That does not always mean patients at Catholic hospitals cannot get help. Some doctors find workarounds for their patients, and it's been an open secret in Catholic hospitals for some time. So one person has researched the church's healthcare policies as they relate to reproductive healthcare and gender-affirming care. So look at what she said. People who want hormonal contraception, the clinicians are advised you can't do it for the purpose of contraception. You can't do a medical abortion. But if the patient has really painful periods or really bad acne, when you're writing down your list of like why you're prescribing something, say it's the acne. Then you can give her the medicine she needs to get a medical abortion. So doctors know about that. And that does happen. Now, how does that apply to trans care? Maybe the loopholes for doctors at these institutions is, hey, trans person, I'm going to refer you to a secular clinic, or I'm going to give you the hormones you need, but it's for a totally different reason. And we'll both just wink, wink. It's for that other, I can't wink. It's for that other reason. They could do that. But again, all of this, I mean, think about what we're talking about here. These doctors are saying, I want to help this patient, but the hospital won't let me help this patient. So I have to do a runaround around the hospital to get this patient the care they need. We shouldn't be in that position in the first place. Just give patients what they need if the doctors approve and say, yeah, this is what you need. It's not like a kid can walk into a hospital and say, I want hormones. I want to be a different gender. That's not how it works unless all you watch is Fox News. Like in real life, the doctors are in on it. They know what's going on. They understand what is happening here. And if their expertise tells them, yes, you do need this, why is the hospital getting in the way of that? I keep thinking of evangelical pharmacists who are like, oh, you have a prescription for birth control? I don't like birth control, so I'm not going to dispense this. Who are you to get in the way of a woman and her doctor? Like, it's not your business. I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what you do at home. Like, just fill the prescription. So anyway, I guess the takeaway from this is a signal that there is no moderating faith-based extremism, because that's what this is. It doesn't matter if the Pope's tone is gentle, which it is. Doesn't matter if the Vatican's document that I showed you has a lot of sensible statements about war is bad and poverty is bad. That's all nice, but they're just giving you some good stuff so that when they hit you with the stuff they actually care about, maybe you won't notice, right? The Catholic Church says it's never going to change on some of the most basic, common sense, moral issues of our time, and they're on the wrong side of all of these. Maybe with the exception of like the death penalty. They're on the wrong side of all of these. It is telling to me they never put out a list of which medical professionals and theologians they consult before putting out these rules. But again, unless more practicing Catholics openly reject the church and walk out of the pews and tell the church this is why I'm leaving, none of this shit's ever going to change. All right, I'm going to stop here. I'll take any last questions. Otherwise, that's all I had for today. Yeah, I mean, they can try to take my vasectomy away, but it's going to be a bit difficult. Actually, I do wonder about that. They won't perform a vasectomy, but I do wonder, because I don't know, will Catholic hospitals do a reverse vasectomy? Because now you're going back to what God wanted, and I have to think they would be fine with that. Wouldn't it be great if doctors got to say what their patients need instead of religions and insurance companies? It's almost like universal healthcare is what we need, and get the middlemen out of the way. We're the only country that doesn't seem to know how to do this. So the greatest difference between the Pope and an amoeba is the size of their dicks. Yes, that is correct. Are there any doctors or the equivalent in the Bible? That's a good question. I mean, I know Jesus just magically healed people like that. Does that count? I'm sure there are. Like the word doctor, I don't think is in it. You're asking the wrong dude, but I don't remember there being any. Therefore, Christians shouldn't be allowed to go to the doctor. Is that what we're getting at here? I don't know. Can you try to wink again? That was a wink. If I just close both eyes and there's the wink. How dare you? All right. Thanks for watching. I should be back next week, not Thanksgiving Day, maybe a little before that. I don't know what time yet. Thanks so much for being with me on this not Thursday night, and have a good week and whatever days you get off. I hope you have good ones. All right. Thank you so much to Den for helping me out as well. Remember, you can subscribe to the newsletter for free at friendlyatheist.com, and you can support the channel for not free by going to patreon.com/Hemant. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Talk to you soon.